Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. So great to have you. If this is your first time, thank you for joining us. If you are back, we really appreciate you coming back. So this is the second installment of our worldwide book study of the Transformative Leader. And I have to tell you, after our session last week and some of the conversations that we had during the session as well as afterwards, I could not be more excited about having this session today. And so let me just go over a couple of logistics. We've made a couple of changes. We actually turned this into a webinar as opposed to a meeting. That may not mean anything to you, but the way it shows up for you is maybe you have a few more buttons down at the bottom. So you don't have to worry about it. Basically, what we're going to stay with is if you have comments or if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat section, the chat box. So you can send those chats to the panelists or you can send them to everybody. You can also, I believe, submit them anonymously. So it's entirely up to you. But also you have the option of raise your hand. So from time to time, we'll have the opportunity during this conversation to stop and hear from somebody, like audio. And so if you want to get involved that way, raise your hand and we'll come to you as soon as we possibly can. And so you can go ahead and get involved in the conversation. And again, I would appreciate your participation, no matter what form it comes in, because it always adds something to this event and to this experience. Now, while I go through a couple of more logistical details, if you have any questions or comments, things that you want to talk about relative to last week's topic, go ahead and put those in the chat as well. Remember that last week we talked about the characteristics of a high commitment culture and the leaders who create those. We talked a little bit about how you can get the most out of the book and so on and so forth. So if you have anything about that, we can also try and address those. Okay, so now let me just run a quick poll here. I'm going to ask Naveed to run a poll for us to see how many of you actually had a chance to do the reading assignment. Now, this is anonymous. We're not trying to shame anybody or make anybody feel bad. I just want to get a feel for how many of you are familiar with the topic, so I know how much detail I should go into. So if you don't mind, just go ahead and answer this one question for us, and we'll see sort of where we are. And I can see the results right now. About a third have read the assignment, and about 15% or so sort of dabbled into it, and about 11% said, no, I haven't really read it. Okay, so about 60% actually now. Most of you, about 90% of you have either read it or have had some exposure to it. So that's really great. That gives me some indication. Thank you so much. And again, whether you've read the assignment or not, I'm so glad you're here, right? Because it's all about the conversation. But yeah, so I think we've got a pretty good idea here with the poll. Thanks, Naveed. We're going to go ahead and end that poll. And so one other thing that I wanted to mention to you real quick is, first of all, if the reason you didn't read the assignment or didn't get around to it or whatever is that you didn't have the book, please know that basically what we wanted to do was we wanted to make the reading assignment available for this time, because if somebody signed up, it was going to take them a while to acquire the book and so on. I know many of you have ordered the book. Some of you have gotten the audio book or the ebook. If you want to order the book, you can go to the ganadgroup.com/book-study, and you'll see some buttons there for different formats where you can get the book. The other thing I wanted to mention about last week's topic in terms of how you can create an extraordinary culture in your workplace and things like that. If you're really interested in digging into that a little bit more, aside from reading what's in the book, I'm presenting a webinar today that has been very well received, I would say, all around the world. In some form or fashion, I have presented this since 2011. And these are a set of principles that helped us go from the worst to the best in one of the operations that I was in. And so this webinar is going to be presented today at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. Eastern, through Association for Supply Chain Management, ASCM. Now, I presented this live in Las Vegas last year, rather, easy for me to say, and it was rated one of the top, I'm not allowed to tell you exactly how many or whatever, but let's just say it was very small single digits among 63 presentations that were made at that event. So it was received very well. And so I'm doing that as a webinar today. If you cannot make it, you may want to go ahead and register for it anyway. We're putting that in the chat for you. And that way, at least you'll get the recording. So if you're interested in that. But now let's talk a little bit about, and I'll pause in just a moment before we get into the actual OPLs, the 1-point lessons. But let me tell you, sort of make the connection between the first part of the book that we went over last time and the second part, which are these 1-point lessons. I'm real clear that if you really want to be a great leader, it has to start with self-awareness. It has to start with your own resilience and knowing what's going on with you and sort of mastering yourself. It's not like you have to be perfect before you can go lead somebody else, but you ought to be at least working on it. And these 21-point lessons really have to do with you sort of creating or getting in touch with that part of yourself, which is a transformative leader. And so I always tell people that they ought to read these 1-point lessons in the order that really resonates with them. In other words, while there is some rhyme or reason for the order in which they appear in the book, I always encourage people to look at the titles and maybe read the bottom line. There's that one little paragraph at the end of each 1-point lesson and see what resonates with you and start there. If you need to go to 1-point lesson 15 first, that's okay. Go there and get something from it, and then thumb through it and see what you're going to cover next. So for today's session, I have picked 2 lessons that I believe are most relevant to the challenges that we're facing today. And simply because these 2 lessons really have everything to do with your resilience and you getting in touch with that part of yourself that is most powerful in the face of challenges. I mean, so you have tools at your disposal, you have resources at your disposal, but one of the greatest resources that you have is yourself and how you manage to use the knowledge that you already have and how you make decisions at this difficult time. And so many times what happens is we get discombobulated and we are not our best selves. And there's not a time that is more important than now for you to be completely powerful in the face of challenges. So these are 2 lessons that I've picked for this situation. Not necessarily because they're my favorites, because people have asked me, so which one of these 1-point lessons are your favorites? Well, I don't have favorites, honestly, because what I know is that depending on what you're going through, depending on what you're ready for, there is a 1-point lesson in here that is going to be your favorite. And at times for me, as I've looked through the book, some other ones have stood out for me because of what I've had going on. So we're going to get into these 2 1-point lessons. The first one having to do with what is your life made up of? And the second one, keep the passion, ditch the drama. But let me pause here for a second and see if we have any questions or comments that we need to address right now before I get into it.
Not at the moment. I think you're
I'm sorry?
Not at the moment. I think you're good to go.
All right, good to go. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And by the way, Nasim knows that she has license to interrupt me if I get long-winded and don't stop to address questions or comments. So we're going to do that. And so one of the things that I wanted to do at the beginning of this lesson is let me read to you a portion of the book on page 131. Okay, so really, when we talk about what is your life made up of, I've done this, I've had this conversation with people literally in all around the world when I've spoken. And I ask people, I said, so if I ask you what the chair that you are sitting in is made up of, you would point to some of those components. You know, it's the leg, it's the back, and so on and so forth. So what if I asked you what your life is made up of? And people generally just shout out some answers, and most of those answers have to do with what is in their life, right? They say my job, my relationship, my money, my skills, and my hobbies, and things like that. And while all of those things are true, I'm very convinced that if they decided to go a little bit deeper, they might even, address their faith and values and so on and so forth. But if you go to page 132, I'm just going to read this part right here. It says, I submit that your life is made up of your thoughts, your words, your actions, your habits, which ultimately form your character and determine your destiny. So think about it this way, that you have something in your life, but then there are these other things, your thoughts and your words and your actions and your habits, that really shape your experience of your life. Circumstances, people, and things influence your life, but you hold the power to alter how you process the impact that those external factors have on you. Whether you take control of your thoughts, your words, and so on, or you allow your circumstances to be in control, your perception of how your life has turned out is a sum total of what you think, what you say, what you do, and what habits you develop. Look, let me demonstrate this for you with a very simple example. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it happens to me often, where I wake up in the morning and within just a few seconds, I have this zest for life. I'm really excited. It's like it's a good day. Wow, I feel really good about myself. My experience of my life, independent of what's going on, is really great. And then it might be the next day or the next week where one day I wake up and it seems like the world around me is just crumbling and nothing is going right. Well, this is not going to be a great day. And I want to tell you, the world around me didn't really change that much from one day to the next. But what did change was how I was thinking about things that were happening and the conversation I was having with myself about what was happening. You see, this is really also evident when you think about people who have overcome unspeakable adversity. We know these people. We know some of the people around us who have done that. We certainly know a lot of these larger than life people who basically went to prison and stayed committed to a cause and so on and so forth. And so what has happened to them was they refused to have what was happening to them alter their conversation with themselves and their conversations with others around what their life is going to be about. And so this is a really, really important thing. Now, I get that there's a lot of, there are these cliches out there and we read them and we listen to them, and depending on how we're thinking, how we're feeling on that day, we might dismiss them. It's like, it's not what happens to you, but what you do about it, whatever. You're like, yeah, I know, but you don't understand. Here's what's going on with me. Look, I don't want to disregard or minimize the impact of negative thoughts that attack you when you lose your job, when your 401k feels like a 201k, and whatever else, right? But what I'm saying to you is, I'm not talking about the automatic thoughts that rush into your head. I'm not talking about the immediate emotion that shows up. I'm not even talking about the action that you take before you even think, you react. I'm talking about recognizing that your experience of your life can truly be independent of what's going on outside of you. You could take that situation and with some intentionality, begin to alter your thoughts and begin to alter your words. And you see that it basically seeps into the actions that you take, and ultimately it shifts your results. You see, it causes you to be a certain kind of person. as opposed to just going through the motions, but you show up a certain way, your character, and ultimately your destiny. So if we recognize that, we say, look, I'm going to get off track. I may get off track 10 times a day. I'm sitting here talking about this, and I guarantee you that sometime today, I'm going to catch myself with some thoughts I really don't want in my head. So I'm going to show you a couple of tricks here later on in this chapter around how to get rid of those unwanted thoughts that are automatic thoughts, okay? But so that's what we're talking about. If you agree to this notion that what really shapes your experience of your life is really your thoughts and the words you speak and the actions you're taking, then you can begin to turn things around. It may not be an overnight thing, but you can shift your state immediately, and over time, you begin to shift your results, and ultimately, you find yourself going in an entirely different direction. Now, you know, I also on page 132, sorry, I also give an example of this fellow that I met many years ago. He found out that he had a turn, okay, and it was an illness that just was not curable. He knew his days were numbered. And this guy was one of the most cheerful and truly happy people that I've ever met, even during those times. Basically what he did was he sold everything that he had, and he moved into this small room and dedicated the rest of his life to feeding the homeless. He would go solicit people for food and drinks and their time and stuff like that. And then he'd go out and spend his days nurturing or ministering to the homeless people. And he was so full of joy, not because of what he had in his life, because he had a terminal illness in his life, but because of the experience he was creating for himself and the context he was creating for himself. Now, is that easy? I don't think so. I think that's probably very hard to do, but is it worth it? Yes. And so this is not to say that I'm asking you to never feel bad about anything, or feel those feelings come and go. But if you subscribe to this idea, then what you can do is begin to shift your thoughts and your words. And I have found myself here lately, even in the last couple of months, for the most part, I've been pretty encouraged by, hey, what's possible and so on. I can easily say most of the time I'm really busy doing some things that I love and all this, but occasionally I find myself thinking, oh geez, I go into this pity party and all of that, and I just refuse to talk, speak those words, because I know I don't want those thoughts to be transferred out there via my words. I'm just going to be quiet. I'm not going to say, oh, well, woe is me, and how is this going to work out? Because I know that when I say that, I hear it and somebody else hears it, and it gets into that. So that sort of vicious cycle. So that's what this is all about. Now, here's if you look at this figure that I have on page 134, and again, if you have the book or if you downloaded the pre-reading, you can see this. And now the concepts here are not new. They've been said many different times. Your thoughts turn into your words turn into your actions, so on and so forth. But what I added here is this little squiggly form, and that is the line. And it's really intended, again, on page 134, it's intended to say, look, if you work backwards from your character to your habits, to your actions, to your words, to your thoughts, the further upstream you go, the more you sort of shift the needle. You see, if you change some of your habits, let me just read this for you from page 133. I'd suggest you start small with some of your habits at work or in your personal life. If you have habits that are destructive and do not serve your purpose, commit to cutting them back. To occasional actions if you cannot completely eliminate them. Now, if there are actions that you're taking that do not serve you or your community, commit to not taking those actions again. It's a simple commitment that you make to yourself. Will you be able to stay with it 100%? Maybe not. But at least you make a commitment, and next time you take that action, you catch yourself. Now, working backwards from actions to words. If there are words that you habitually speak that are negative and are perhaps the source of certain actions, remove those words from your vocabulary. And of course, the most powerful step is to choose your thoughts. If you have some thoughts and you don't want to have them, basically, there are a couple of ways that you can change these unwanted thoughts, okay? And I'm going to share those with you. Look, we all know that sometimes these negative thoughts just come into our head. And this is where I always say, you know, if you're in your head, you need to get out because it's a bad neighborhood, right? Because many of these thoughts, you know, there's an old saying that says, I have suffered many tragedies in my life, and some of them actually happened. You see, we suffer through our thoughts and our imagination of the worst, whether that thing happens or not. And so how do you change these unwanted thoughts? Well, there are two ways, okay? The first that I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to ask you to just go through a little exercise with me right here, right now, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate this sort of rhythm, and some of you have seen this in sessions that you've been in with me. I'm going to ask you to count in your head, like silently in your head. Start with 1 and just keep going. 1, 2, 3, right? So when I say go, I want you to do that, okay? Now, please play along. Now, no time for multitasking or anything. You got to be with me. So play along. When I say go, I want you to count, and then I will give you some instructions, and I want you to immediately follow those instructions, okay? And do what I ask you to do. All right, ready to go? Go. Now speak your name out loud and tell me where you work. What is your place of employment, or where would you like to work? Go ahead, do it now. Okay, I know for some of you that felt kind of silly. You're sitting by yourself and you're talking out loud and all of this kind of stuff, but let me ask you, maybe you can put it in the chat box here for us. Were you able to continue to count in your head while you spoke out loud? Let me just see what people are saying in the chat box over here. Right, nope, can't do it. Man, that is a relief. That is a relief. I got it. Okay, super. So you know why that's a relief? Because you know what, out of all the sessions that I've done, I've asked this question, I've gone through this exercise with thousands of people, like literally. And of all of those times, there's just one guy who said he was able to count in his head while he was speaking something else out loud. And there's no other nicer way to say this, but that guy was a liar. Because it's just not possible for you to speak one stream of thought and think another, okay? And so here's the thing. I want to encourage you, if you, next time you have those unwanted thoughts, just open your mouth and speak out loud something that empowers you. Like I say in the book, you know, I've got my kids who are accomplished, they're wonderful people, but occasionally as a parent, I'm thinking, oh geez, you know, what if this happens? What if this happens? Why did they do that? Why didn't they do that? And when those thoughts happen, those thoughts come to me, what I do is I speak out loud and I say, you know what, my kids are blessed, they are awesome, they're going to have a great future and everything. And while I'm speaking those thoughts, the negative thoughts are interrupted. So that's trick number 1. Now, I also mentioned in the book that if you don't want to do that because you don't want other people to think you're crazy because you're talking to yourself, you can put one of those Bluetooth things in your ear and they will think that you are on the phone. But really, I also mentioned in the book that the best way to do that, to interrupt those thoughts, is you don't have to talk to yourself. Get into conversations of transformation with other people. Don't just go to people who are willing to commiserate with you. Go to people who are willing to let you vent, but then get into a conversation of transformation with you. So that's trick number 1. Speak words that will interrupt the unwanted thoughts that are in your head. Trick number 2, when you're having that conversation with yourself and you're having those unwanted thoughts, is to behave your way into a new way of thinking. Instead of trying to think your way into a new way of behaving, behave your way into a new way of thinking. You see, my exercise program that I had for many years that I wasn't following is a really good example, right? Because in the morning, me, myself, and I would have a conversation about exercising. Then I would say, okay, how about we go tomorrow, and so on and so forth. And what I'm going to tell you is, while that conversation is going on, the trick that I discovered was I would start putting on my clothes and going downstairs on the treadmill and all that while that conversation was going on, because it was much easier for me to behave my way into a new way of thinking than it was to think my way into a new way of behaving. When I tried to think my way into a new way of behaving, the bad guy always won, and it didn't work. And so these are some of the ways that you can overcome those unwanted thoughts. And again, the further upstream you go on that cycle, if you eliminate some of your actions, if you eliminate some of your words, I talk about rumble strips in here on page 134. Put some rumble strips on there for yourself to say, you know, these are indicators that if you can cut out a habit, look back and say, look, I bring an example, say, look, if I'm a recovering alcoholic, right, and say I've had a habit that I have put behind me, perhaps what I don't want to do is I don't want to just stop at having that habit. I want to eliminate some actions. I'm going to say, you know what, I'm not even going to go to a bar and expect that I'm just going to hang out with my friends and not drink. Maybe I go backwards and say, you know what, even that action, I'm going to stop. Right? So let me pause here for a second and see if we've got any other comments. Let me see. I see a comment from Nicole. Absolutely, sanity is relative to each person. If it makes you the crazy positive person in the room, then so be it. Wonderful. Absolutely, Nicole. Really great. Thank you so much. Yeah. So.
Amir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I think my I don't think my microphone was working for.
Okay, go for it.
So we do have some questions and some comments. Mark actually asked a question. He said, so when your team is going down a negative path of thinking when tackling a problem, yeah, interrupting and saying we have the best team here who can solve this problem would be a good tactic?
I think it's important to acknowledge what the source of their anxiety is. So first of all, what we don't want to do is we don't want to come across like we're just kind of this positive thinking person and so on and so forth without really understanding or acknowledging reality. So the answer is yes. But what I would also add to that is acknowledge today's reality. Yeah, you're right. We're facing some challenges and today we don't have the answers. But you know what? We are one heck of a team and we're going to figure this out. So I think changing the conversation that way does make a difference. It's a great question. Thank you.
And then a comment from Rosita. She says, I must share that I've experienced what you were saying firsthand by simply through these webinars and reading your book. Although I've only just begun, I find myself subconsciously becoming more positive. Friends and coworkers noticed it before I even realized it myself.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to stop and do my happy dance right now then. This is awesome. These are the moments I live for. Thank you so much, Rosita. Wonderful for you to have taken action. And I'm so glad you're seeing the results. So look, I'm going to try and wrap this lesson up in just the next few minutes. But as you've noticed, we have the bottom line. So I'm going to read the bottom line. What shapes the quality of our lives is not what we have in our lives, but how we generate and process our experience of life through our thoughts, words, actions, and habits. Yes, we can react to what's going on, or we could respond proactively. I don't want to minimize what's going on. Look, my speaking engagements have been canceled. Our retirement has taken a hit. So I have some feeling of what's going on. And although I'm really, really blessed, and I get that some people are in really tough spots, and I don't want to take anything away from their anguish. But the thing is this: you want to be the most powerful version of yourself, at this particular time. And the only way you can do that is not by just playing whack-a-mole with your problems, but just being intentional with your thoughts and words. And then finally, I will mention the reflection questions. There are some reflection questions that I would highly encourage you to go through. Are there certain habits that you know you should eliminate? And what are they? Are there certain actions that you take periodically that on page 137, that is, that you know that you need to stop? What are they? Do you speak negative things into your life? And things like that. So take a few minutes and answer those questions for yourself. And then I recommend some actions that I would really, again, these are not prescriptions. They're not like, go do this, but they're recommendations that you can adapt to your situation. All right. So Nassim, what else do we have? Anything on this particular lesson?
Just a few people in the chat. Mike says, was that really a happy dance, Amir? Let's see some real moves.
Okay, there we go. All right, very good.
Let's see. Mark says, you know, that's definitely a bad habit I have. My passion sometimes makes me forget to listen first. And Joy says she's the same. Jennifer says, thank you for leading these during these trying times. Your energy is amazing, very helpful. As leaders, we must stay positive. And Mark again is saying, I like the comment of acknowledging the fears first and steering to a more positive direction.
Absolutely. And you know what, thank you so much. I don't know how to express how blessed I am with these comments. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful. There's a couple of other things I just want to mention to you relative to this lesson, and then we're going to go on to the next one. And so the first thing is the power of gratitude. Look, the best way to change the conversation in your head is to be grateful for what you have. It may not be much, but look, you know, as Viktor Frankl said, you know, many of you know him as the Austrian psychiatrist who was also a Holocaust survivor. I'm going to read his quote to you. He said, everything can be taken away, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. Okay, and so this is something, this is a freedom that you have, that you get to exercise if you choose to, and it is going to make a difference for you. So with that, I'm going to continue to go on, and I just want to make sure, and again, that you guys can see me, because I can see Nassim, and there we go.
I can see you.
Oh, okay, good. I can see you too.
Okay, turn off my camera so you can talk.
All right, fantastic. Got it. Super de duper. Okay, so let's get into this next conversation. I think you mentioned Mike, who said something about my passion really drives me sometimes to do this. And now I think it's a really perfect segue into the next lesson. Keep the passion, ditch the drama. Okay, so let me read from page 139, just one little excerpt from the book. It says, in my experience in leading organizations and coaching clients, I have come across countless occurrences of people being so overwhelmed and emotional about a situation that their very behavior was making the problem worse. I have also heard people defend their destructive behavior as a sign of their passion. After all, if they didn't care, they wouldn't get so mad. On the other hand, I believe we have all known people who are so easygoing all the time that you wonder if they ever get excited about anything. And while the positive effect of them being able to remain calm and focused is clear to others, sometimes their level of commitment and passion is brought into question. And I've certainly been on both sides of this spectrum myself. You know, at times I've been so passionate to where, you know, it wasn't really passion, it was drama, as I will explain a little bit later. And at times I've just kind of been sort of indifferent. And so the key here, and what we address in this chapter, is how can you have the best of both worlds? How can you remain calm and, you know, eliminate the drama, but keep your passion? Look, I want to tell you a story. About 35 5 years ago now, I started my career with Procter & Gamble down in Albany, Georgia. And about 2 or 3 months after I started, somebody pulled me to the side and they said to me, they said, you know, Amir, I like you, you're a good kid. And I want to give you some advice because I want you to be successful. I said, so what is it? And they said, you know what? The secret to success in this plant is you need to walk fast and you need to look nervous. And I was thinking to myself, really, is that it? I mean, like, what? Does that even make any sense? So of course, I never really adopted that. But years later, as I began to study human behavior and all of this, it began to click for me that at the time we had a plant manager who always walked really fast and looked nervous. And so everybody thought, hey, that's the sign of passion. That means you care. That means you're going somewhere. Well, you know what? That might have just been his way of doing things. I don't know, but it was sending a signal throughout the entire organization that said to people, look, unless you're looking nervous, unless you're doing this, that means you don't have a lot of passion. Well, you know what? That is wrong. There are ways that you can express your passion and not have so much drama. And so let me just kind of read another little portion of the book here on page 140, the second paragraph. It says, there is a widespread assumption that there's a correlation how passion you have for a subject and how much drama you experience around it, either privately or publicly. And, yeah.
You just broke up a little bit. Can you start from the beginning again?
I will do that. Sorry about that. Yeah, there is a widespread assumption that there is a correlation between how much passion you have for a subject and how much drama you experience around it, either privately or publicly. And so there's good reason for this assumption because generally the two go hand in hand. In other words, you know, as I demonstrate in the figure, again, on page 142, I'm just going to hold this up. In this figure, basically what we try to explain here, I say we, because Naveed and I actually developed this model together. So I'm really excited to share it with you, but it's something that he and I worked on together. Is that, look, if on the left-hand side of this figure, if there's a topic that you are indifferent to, you don't really care about it, right? There's a social issue or some issue at work or something that you really don't care about. You don't have any passion for it, but at the same time, in those areas of our lives, there is no drama. But if you go to the right-hand side and those topics that you really care about, people you care about, topics you care about, social issues you care about, then you have a lot of passion for it. But at the same time, those are the areas in which you experience a lot of drama. Isn't that the case for you, right? Because look, I mean, I love my kids and I love the neighbors' kids. Like when they were in high school, I remember the neighbor's kid, good kid, I really liked them. But you know what? I had a lot more passion about how my kids did in school. So more passion and more drama. If the neighbor's kid flunked out of a course or whatever, sure, I didn't feel good because I liked the kid. But it didn't cause me a lot of drama. It was like, oh, geez, man, that's too bad for Johnny. I hope he gets it together. But if my kids had a big issue, then I was like, wow, you know, it's like drama. Why? Because I have a lot of passion. So how do we separate these and keep the passion and ditch the drama? The way we do that is by distinguishing that the moment you get into the drama zone with a certain attitude or certain behavior or a certain mindset, the moment you step into the drama zone, you have stepped out of the passion zone. And this distinction is very, very important because while it's natural that you may go in and out of passion and drama, it is not possible to be in both zones at the same time. And so let me demonstrate for you. So, you know, on page 141, we have this table that starts, and then the second part of it is on page 142. So let me just cover a few of these. So let's talk about passion. What does passion look like? Passion looks like being proactive. In other words, your actions are based on the outcome that you're committed to. On the drama side, you are reactive. Your actions are based on what just happened, whether they further your cause or not. In the passion zone, you're innovative. When a problem shows up, innovation shows up. In the drama zone, frustration shows up. In the passion zone at the top, there's an abundance mentality. Look, there's plenty to go around. In the drama zone, there is scarcity mentality. You know, if you win, that means I'm going to lose because there's only so much to go around. In the passion zone, there's faith in a positive outcome. It's not wishful thinking. It's declaring a future and actively working toward it. In the drama zone, there's fear of a negative outcome. And going on to page 142, I'll cover a couple more of these. We talked about I am the one, declaring yourself the one, being accountable, being responsible. That's passion. Drama says someone else needs to make it happen. You know, it's not my fault. It's, you know, somebody bigger than me needs to do it. In the passion zone, it's not about me. It's all about the mission. It's all about what we're out to accomplish. In the drama zone, it's all about me. Finally, in the passion zone, just a couple more things. We focus on what is the most important thing I can do right now. Look, we're going through a global pandemic. There are changes in your personal lives, in your, professional life, and so on and so forth. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by this thing of how are we going to work our way back to normal and what's going to happen in the future. But you know what? Passion says focus on what's important right now. Yes, have a transformative vision that energizes you, but focus on what's the most important next step I can take right now. Whereas in the drama zone, we're talking about who can I blame for the situation and so on and so forth. We lose our energy on those kinds of things. Passion is intentional. Drama is automatic. It's default, by default shows up. Finally, passion is energizing and drama is draining. And the last thing I will say about the distinction between passion and drama is, again, on page 141. It says passion is personal and it can exist independent of others. You can truly just ignite that passion. However, drama needs an audience, and without it, it dies down quickly. And I'm going to pause in just a second and take some questions. But let me explain this. I don't know if you've ever seen little toddlers or whatever just walking and they fall down and they might hurt their knee or something. They look around, and if there's an audience, they begin to cry and try and get attention. But if they look around, if you've seen some of these hidden camera things and all that, and nobody's around, they just get up and go because drama needs an audience. Well, you know what? Sometimes we do the same thing as adults, right? So let me pause here and see what comments we have here. I see that there is a...
Yeah, we've got a few comments.
Yeah. Go ahead, please, Nassim.
Also, if anyone wants to ask a question live, feel free to raise your hand and I will unmute you. So Robbie says there's a thin line between the two, passion and drama. Your way of thinking can carry you one way or the other. And then Mark has a question, and then I'll get to Nicole's comments. So Mark says this section is very interesting. How do you handle the difference in perception of a plant level employee versus outside perception of the passion/drama table? Sometimes what I see as passion from my team is seen as drama outside.
Okay. So this is a very important point, right? Because the first thing you got to be concerned about is not what it looks like on the outside, but are you really in control of your emotions and your thoughts? And are the actions you are taking really calculated based on where you want to go? Or are you just simply giving into your immediate emotions and default behavior? So that's the first thing, regardless of how it looks out there. Now, once you get centered on those things and you know that what you're doing is really based on passion, not drama, then of course it becomes really important to also make sure that you communicate properly and that you enroll and energize others so that they also see it as passion. So start with yourself and make sure that you're not discombobulated, and then manage the communication. It's a great, great distinction. Thank you so much, Nicole.
So we actually have a raised hand and some other comments coming into the chat. So I am going to unmute. I'm going to butcher your name. I'm so sorry. Ali Mayu. I'm going to unmute you.
Okay. I think you might have to mute yourself as well. Oops.
Oh, that's not working.
All right.
Okay, well, let's come back to that person. So John asks, I think it's important, or he says rather, I think it's important to know your team also, so you do not confuse passion and drama. Also important to know if you personally are in the passion or drama zone, as it can reflect back on your team and it may not be seen accurately.
That is so, so important, especially when you're working across different cultures, whether it's like country cultures or different corporate cultures. It's important because we're always judging people based on what we know. And if that person is from a different culture or from a different work environment, it's important to know people so that you're not interpreting what they're saying and doing as passion. I remember one time I was having a conversation with somebody on the plant floor, and we both used our hands a lot. And somebody from a distance, next couple of days, told me, man, you guys were just going at it. I know, I hope you didn't fire the guy or whatever. I'm like, look, no, we were having a great conversation, right? So you got to be mindful of that.
And then Jim has a question. He says, how do you use these concepts to address victim mentality?
You know, again, many lessons, you have to start with yourself. So first of all, make sure that you're okay, because if you try to use these concepts on somebody else, but you're not really role modeling it, it doesn't work. But assuming that you're already in a place where you distinguish your passion from drama, then what happens is, if I see somebody who has a victim mentality, guess what? I'm not going to have drama about that. I'm going to approach it from a passion perspective. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to coach them. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to make sure that they understand the consequences of their behavior. But again, the first place to start is with yourself, because look, the first thing that happens is we're like, oh man, I cannot believe this. We're trying to get this done, and here we go, these people, they have this victim mentality and all that. Then you cannot be effective at really impacting that person. Great question.
I have a comment from Nicole, and Naveed is working with the unmute right now, so hopefully that'll work. But so Nicole says, as a leader of many resources, I saw my role often being to steer the team towards collaboration and solutions and away from drama, even if it was going on around us, to focus on how we move forward and remove ourselves from it. And added, sometimes you have to empathize for a few minutes with the drama makers, then switch the conversation to solutions. I hear you, I understand your point of view, but don't react or add their drama with more drama. I feel like they want to be heard, so even if you don't agree, state that you hear their concern to diffuse the drama. And I think that's a really good point.
These are really great suggestions. You know, let me just cover a couple more things, and then we'll address some other questions if we could. Is that okay, Nassim?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, there we go. So here's the thing. What's important is one thing that I often address with in my presentations when I present on this topic is, look, there are 3 questions that that you really want to address. And if you go through the reflection questions, you'll see these. But first of all, get in touch with the reoccurring drama that shows up in your life. Like, really identify it for yourself and identify what triggers it. I can tell you, I mean, for me, global pandemics, no problem. No drama on my side. I'm good. But there's a glass of water on the table and it spills. Oh, it's the end of the world. Why the heck did that happen? Who put that thing there? And all of this, right? And so I know that little things are my triggers, okay? So get in touch with what is it that constantly creates drama in your life. Once you get sort of a good understanding of that, then ask yourself the question, what can I do to prevent the drama in the first place? Maybe there are things that you need to do up front. Maybe there's some communication. Maybe you avoid certain situations. You're like, look, every time I am in this particular situation, maybe I need to just excuse myself and provide some information to some other people to do it. Maybe there are ways that, and again, I have some suggestions in the book for you that you can do. You can take on, on page 143. There are some of these reasons why drama shows up. Like, we and others perceive drama as validation of our extent of our passion. It is easier and more fun, painful as it may be, than acting on our passion and being proactive. So these are the reasons it shows up. But get in touch with yours and the triggers and figure out how you can prevent them. But then you also have to have an action plan just in case drama shows up anyway. What am I going to do next time drama shows up? And I make some suggestions for you on that. Some of the ways that you can do that is really, stop, own up to it, apologize. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we all lose it and it happens. And when that happens, raise your hand and say, look, it happened. I'm sorry. And so in the reflection questions, I have some of these questions for you, the common triggers, what steps can you take, and all of this. But then in the follow-up steps, I take you through this step-by-step process that I promise you, if you go through it, even if you don't get all the answers perfectly, answer them perfectly, what you will do is you will get in touch with your drama and you will figure out how to get out of the drama zone and the passion zone. So let me pause here. And I don't remember if I think I mentioned, but one of the features that we've added to this webinar is that we are going to actually at 12 o'clock Eastern, we're going to stop recording, but I'm going to hang around for about 15, 20 more minutes. It's absolutely optional, because last time we had a lot of people who kind of stayed around for some time. And what we're going to do is we're going to stay. If you want to have some conversations, we're going to open the lines and have some audio conversations if we can make it happen by then. If not, through chat, so I'll be available for another 15, 20 minutes after that. Again, don't feel bad if you can't make it, but if you can, we're going to do this for the remaining sessions. So let me pause here for a moment and see if Nasim's got something for us from any of the participants.
Well, I wanted to share one thing that I thought you would, kind of experienced. Lauren said, walk fast and look nervous. I was told to act like my hair was on fire.
Yes. Well, that would be a problem for me, but yeah, exactly. We've had similar experiences. Got it.
Yeah, and then another comment from Nicole says, he said, LOL. So true, Amir. It is often the little things that get my bigger reactions. Like every night when my family asks me what's for dinner, like they are incapable of figuring it out on their own. Then during these crazy times, I turn to how grateful I am that we have a choice in food, unlike many who are struggling to feed themselves. So something also you can relate to.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful example. If I could just say a couple words about that, let's just go with that, right? So it's something that is probably happening in millions of households. People are wondering, like, what the heck, right? But what you can do is when you identify that, let's put something in place and say, look, let's just openly admit that this is a source of drama for us in our family. Why don't we act a certain way? Why don't we assign different nights for different people? And I'm not suggesting that you do this, but what I'm suggesting is once you get real clear what that source of drama is, you can actually, we're problem solvers. We can put solutions in place and so we don't experience it. Very good. Thank you so much. Anything else, Nasim?
That's all we have for right now. I think you can carry on.
Okay, fantastic. So again, let me just cover a couple of more things on this passion and drama. Look, this is something that, again, one feature that I want to explain about this figure is that if you go to the right-hand side, there is these topics that we really care deeply about are topics that we want to have influence over. So on the left-hand side, there's a little continuum there that says high influence. Things that you care about, you want to have a high degree of influence over. But guess what? Because drama shows up, what happens is it really reduces the amount of influence that you have in the very area that you want to influence. So it takes you into the negative zone. when you really want to be at your best. And so, again, it's one of those things where if you don't think about it, automatically drama shows up. But for passion to show up, you just got to catch yourself. Look, nobody can tell you, or they may be able to tell you, but I personally refrain from using statements like, you shouldn't think this way, you shouldn't feel this way, because you know what? A lot of these negative thoughts, a lot of the reactionary thoughts and actions that show up in our lives, they show up automatically. It's like you don't even have control over them. What I try to do is I cause people to see that when that shows up, after it shows up, even if they cannot prevent it, they have a choice to stop it and begin to shift the trajectory of their thoughts and their actions, as we talked about in the previous lesson. So hopefully between these two lessons, what is your life made up of? You know, what we did, hopefully between these two, you get something that is going to help you with your resilience in the face of this challenge that we're facing right now, or whatever specific challenges you're facing. In the first one that we went over, what is your life made up of? We distinguished what is in your life versus what makes up your experience of your life. And in the second lesson, we distinguished passion from drama and acknowledged that while it's possible to go between those two back and forth, it is not possible to be in both zones. So when you catch yourself, I'm being dramatic, then you know what? You can get back into the passion zone. And I want to just, again, acknowledge that I'm not living in some la-la land saying, oh, just ignore your problems. No, acknowledge them, work on them. And occasionally, if you need to vent, do that. If some days you just don't feel like going out and, you know, conquering the world, that's fine. Self-care, take care of yourself. Really great. Nothing wrong with that. But just know that you are in control of, you know, whether you shift your thoughts and your actions or not. So let me pause here. We've got just a couple more minutes, see if there are any final comments or questions before we stop the recording. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take about 15 to 20 minutes. Again, there's no pressure at all that you hang in there with us at all. This was scheduled for 1 hour. That's what we asked for. And I'm so grateful you're with us. But if you do want to hang around, I'm happy to be here and continue the dialogue about these topics or what we talked about last time, or anything else really. So next 15, 20 minutes. All right, so let me pause here. Nassim, do we have anything else?
We do. I just wanted to say to Mark, if you want to try to raise your hand, we can give that a go right now if you'd like. And we have a comment from John. He says, one technique, wait 1 second. Naveed, can you do Mark's unmuting, please? John says, one technique that has helped me is to constantly reinforce, keep the end in mind, stay on target. Is the passion or drama bringing me close to the desired result or further away from the desired result or the end state? Beautiful. I love it. And you know what? Later on next week, we're going to cover lesson 1 and lesson 4. And lesson 1 has everything to do with establishing that end result. And then lesson 4 is about staying the course. You know, life lessons from a GPS. So perfect. Yeah, Mark, go ahead. We can't hear Mark. No. Yeah, we're sorry, guys. We don't know what's going on because we tested everything and everything was working, but Mark is showing to be unmuted, but we apologize. This is not working for us right now. Yeah, sorry, Mark. We have a couple of comments coming in the chat section. So Nicole says, thank you for an enriching lesson today, Amir. This was so helpful in these trying times. I'm sorry, I need to hop on a different call a few minutes early. Great to see you. Thank you. You too, Nicole. Thank you. Mark is saying, thanks for a great session. Very well done. Guess the unmute didn't work. He says, do I have to go through a computer perhaps? Naveed, if you could answer that question, that would be great. Joy says, I really enjoyed the passion and drama piece. It will help me to reinforce the different behaviors and triggers. Myra says, grateful for your humble spirit in these trying times. So
thank you all so much for your wonderful comments, your participation. Please help us spread the word on this to your community, others who you think will benefit from this, and come back next time and bring some other folks with you. It's so powerful to have this conversation permeate your community. So you're not the only person who is armed with this language. So it is 12 o'clock Eastern. I'm going to stop here right now, stop the recording anyway. And thank you again for joining us. And we will see you here next week.